All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this presentation that kicks off this year's speaker and workshop series for the Coalition for Diversity in Language and Culture at UNC Greensboro. Just so you know, we are recording this session and we will post the recording of today's session on our YouTube channel so others can access it later on. Today, it is my pleasure to co-host our journey into university English language education research, transnational and transdisciplinary collaborations. Our speakers today are Dr. Jamie Shizzle here at UNC Greensboro, Dr. Angel Arias at Carleton University in Canada, and Dr. Pedro Tavares da Costa from the Universidad Autónoma de Santo Domingo en la República Dominicana. We welcome our presenters today.
Thank you, Melody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mara. Nice meeting you all.
Okay, so as Melody said, we're here today to talk to you about our journey into doing some transnational and transdisciplinary collaborations around English language education research. Before we talk about any of that work, first we want to express our appreciation and gratitude to the CDLC leadership team, their shared governance leadership team, for their support and sponsorship of this talk today. And then we also wanted to begin our meeting what has become traditional across universities in Canada and the United States, and we've also added something from the Dominican Republic as well. So our land acknowledgements, I don't know, Angel, do you want to do?
Yeah, being an ambassador of Carleton University, we acknowledge that our campus is located in the in unceded territories of the Algonquin Nation.
And UNC Greensboro is a community of learners situated with a network of historical and contemporary relations with Native American tribes, communities, parents, students, and alumni. We acknowledge that the land we gather on has long served as a site of meeting and exchange amongst the number of Indigenous peoples, specifically the Keawe and Saura.
My turn.
Yes.
Well, hello, I'm Pedro Tavares. I'm an EFL professor at Universidad Autónoma de Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic, which was the first university established in the new continent, that is to say, in the whole America. Next month of October, our university is turning 843 years of existence in our continent. I'm very proud and very honored to be part of the faculty member of that university. I have also conducted some research in the field of English as a foreign language for non-native speakers. And it is my pleasure to be here sharing with you my humble experiences. Thank you.
Thank you. So just to give you an overview of what we're going to be talking about today, we're going to first start to go over some of the different conceptual terms that we talk about in terms of transnational and transdisciplinary collaborations. Then we'll shift into something a little bit more like personal about how we know what we know and how we know what we know and how we know each other and what it means to be collaborating with each other. We'll also give an overview of a project that Angel and I have been working on for some time now on language ecology approach to multilingual assessment as kind of an example of these transdisciplinary, transnational collaborations. Then we'll talk about some musings about the upcoming direction. So our collaboration amongst the three of us is only just beginning. And so we'll be presenting from that position today to kind of talk through how we're starting this process with each other. So first, we wanted to kind of give a grounding of how we understand transnational and transdisciplinary research from the different literature perspectives. So transnational, just as a term, has its origins attributed to Randolph Bourne, who was an intellectual in the United States. He did not live very long. He was born in the late 1800s and died in the early 1900s. But he was a pretty prolific writer. And one of the things that he talked quite a bit about was this idea of rejecting the melting pot metaphor that was very prevalent at the time around immigration narratives in the United States. And in turn, talking about what it means to be transnational, really never being able to be considered solely part of one nation state or to hold all of one nation state's ideologies fully and completely. For us, we also like to look towards what transnational means in terms of collaborations, and in particular across universities, it's quite relevant to what we're trying to endeavor towards in our work together. And so just kind of understanding that transnational collaborations between universities really do offer the opportunity to connect global and local considerations and enable the integration of intercultural dimensions in research and teaching, trying to draw from the abundance of resources that can come from those types of collaborations.
Yeah, and to add to what Jamie has discussed about transnational collaborations, one of the challenges that we face when we are collaborating, it's to understand the context in which we work and find ways and pathways to make sure that that collaboration is seamless, and then so that we can work together towards our shared goals and to integrate knowledge that actually comes from different contexts. And that is one of the advantages and the power of collaborating horizontally, if you will, taking into account all the challenges that not only affect our shared goals, like, from Canada, United States, and the Dominican Republic, and coming together to make sure that we attend to all the hurdles that we might encounter, but also at the same time be support to each other and share the experiences across our countries.
Thank you. And shifting to what we're thinking about in relation to transdisciplinary work, it dovetails really well or complements really well this transnational approach that we're talking about too. This idea of transdisciplinarity really has its origin with Jean Piaget in the 1970s, but has taken firm hold across multiple forms of writing, right? The transdisciplinary nature of transdisciplinarity would be that it would be taken up widely, right, across different areas. And then we're pulling from Niculescu's work on transdisciplinarity, and saying that it is simultaneously between the disciplines, across different disciplines, beyond all discipline. So the goal is the understanding of the present world, of which one of the imperatives is the unity of knowledge. And we'll talk in the next slide about what that really means for our research, but in terms of what it means in terms of our planning and our problem statements and trying to understand what we're doing and why we're interested in what we're interested in, it really does mean much more of an inclusion rather than an exclusion of thoughts and ideas and understandings.
And as Jamie mentioned, like as we progress in the presentation, you'll see that we come from very different backgrounds. And the idea of transdisciplinary collaborations is to mitigate the silos and make sure that we are working towards the unity of knowledge, regardless of where we come from, in terms of our academic training or research interests, but working together to create, as Niculescu in 1996 intelligently wrote, about an imperative of the unity of knowledge.
So in our work, this kind of more concretely starts to come to bear in how we talk about transnationalism through our lived experiences, which we'll be doing very soon. We'll talk about ourselves as well. Also trying to really understand that our educations are really reflective of the locations, regions, and nation states in which they occurred. So trying to make sure that we're contextualizing our own educational experiences and that have shaped our own worldviews. Also, in working on this towards a research end, trying to understand the different professional demands and motivations for research collaborations that is put upon us based on our different professional situations. But really just knowing that across all of this, we're really looking at what is something that we can see across all context while not trying to lose what is really important and related to each specific context as well.
I think we can go on to transdisciplinary, Jenny, because I alluded to this like 2 slides before.
Okay. So for the transdisciplinary part of it, in terms of the silos that Angel mentioned earlier, it's about honoring them, like trying to figure out like what place and space they may hold in our work, but also pushing back against them, especially when it reflects like when there's incongruencies with the research that we're concerned with. And that basically means that we're tasked to lean into the tensions that arise within the different disciplines that we're working with. In order to do that, we are focused on remaining committed to our shared goals and really re-articulating, revising, restating those goals on a regular basis in order to keep those commitments strong. And then also the important thing about those goals is that they're always connected with focusing on research for the benefit of those that are facing any consequences of the work that we're doing.
And coming together from somewhat different research interests and different topics, we have the opportunity to attend to the consequences that can stem from the work that is done in education. Jamie and I, we both do work in assessment, but we do not necessarily have the same training. And Pedro comes from more like a TESOL background, and the three of us can attend to the different consequences that can stem from the work that we do, from teaching, teaching experiences, or in the case of assessment, from language or any test in education that stood in stake. And we can have kind of like a bird's eye view, but also like a bottom-up approach to things to make sure that the assessment, for instance, in the case of testing, do not have negative consequences in student population, or that like top-down policies are not pushing down, or if they are, we can advocate for the consequences that they might have or impact education system, not only in the United States, but also in Canada and the Dominican Republic, where there are less testing practices in Canada, not so testing center like the US, but in the Dominican Republic, as Pedro will probably share in talk, we have national examinations that they can be very high stakes when it comes to sanctions of high school students and even in elementary school.
So our final slide to kind of talk about some of the different theoretical framing we have for our work is focused on collaboration. So in our work, we're also working to actively reinscribe traditional power dynamics and working with between who is considered a researcher, who is considered a participant. And really also starting from assumptions because it is focused on English language education, really focusing on what's going on with language teachers and students and the crucial roles that they play in English language teaching research, especially the unexpected ways in which language and assessment as well can be used and reoriented. For us in our work, that means this is all quite organic and bottom up. So it really means that we have these collaboration focused around a collective commitment among everyone that's involved in the team to support efforts to draw from community knowledge, to generate contextually relevant English language education approaches that are amenable to the meaningful inclusion of learners' backgrounds and needs, right? So it's not necessarily our agenda, right? But it's the agenda that's kind of co-constructed and articulated in collaboration amongst the three of us for sure, especially in these initial stages. And then as the group grows, right, with the different amount of people that would want to be part of the work, finding space and place and ways for that collaboration to grow and reflect that as well. So now we'd like to introduce ourselves and kind of explain a little bit of how we know, what we know, why are we in these positions where we can come to you
How we
all
get
and
to know
talk
each other, right?
and yes, and importantly, how we got to know each other. So
Well,
I
that's
go-
quite an interesting story, Jamie.
yes.
You know, I'm from the Dominican Republic, and I used to work in a private university located in the city of Puerto Plata, which is the northernmost part of the Dominican Republic. There, I was the head department of the foreign languages at Universidad Dominicana OIM. That's where I met my little brother, Dr. Angel Arias, who came from a neighboring city of Rio San Juan and was from the very beginning an excellent and outstanding student as well as an excellent person. So it was my pleasure and my surprise. And I'm telling this to my students. Listen, Angel is a product of Dominican education, and I'm very honored and very proud of being his professor during the time he was majoring for his bachelor degree program at Universidad Dominicana OIM, which is now under the presidential private university of the Dominican Republic, because it belongs to the presidential family now. As Jamie, well, we almost get to know there in a TESOL conference 3 years ago at Chicago, 2018, but we couldn't. We met at Research Gate, which is a place where we share with researchers from all over the world. And look how small this world is. We are here together, and our main purpose of getting together, it is for conducting researchers out of scholars from different educational background and culture and nationality and language as well. As per me, I'm a professor at the School of Foreign Languages at Universidad Autónoma de Santo Domingo. I also conduct and post some researches, mostly at ERIC and then at Research Gate. Yes, of course. I belong to the TESOL International Association, TESOL International, since 20 years ago or so, and I have attended some conferences in the United States of America. Like I said before, our university is turning the next month of October 483 years of existence. It was constituted by a bull of Pope Paul III in 1538, the first university established in the whole continent. Our country, the Dominican Republic, it is the island of Hispaniola, which is split into different countries. Haiti to the west, Haiti was the French colony, and the Dominican, what is now the Dominican Republic, was the Spanish colony. So the island was split in two different countries, racially and linguistically speaking. Now we have two republics, and the Hispaniola island was a multilingual island before the arrival of the Spaniards, and the first aborigines were the Taínos, and the Taínos spoke a language that disappeared. We could only maintain some few words of the Taino language. The Taino language disappeared completely. Unlike the same happened with other Southern American countries where they maintain the native language. Not us. That was not, unfortunately, in our case. Thank you.
Yeah, and as Pedro just mentioned, I was his student from actually 2000. Yeah, I entered university in the year 2000, 2005. Then he was a motivator, not only a great professor, but also somebody that would push you to be better every single day. And he instituted in us a culture to attend conferences at the Dominico Americano, which is an institute in the Dominican Republic, and they used to host some actually folks that used to attend TESOL. Sometimes they will be invited to these summer conferences.
Yes.
And we would attend as a group these conferences. That was when kind of like my standpoint started of, I didn't know where and when, but I always told my colleagues I would like to do a master's outside of the country. And that's how working in tourism and working with Canadians, Canada came up. And I came to Canada to visit in 2008. I have always been passionate about languages, and given that the program that I followed in the Dominican Republic, the program I pursued in modern languages, we had both French and English courses at different levels. And then Canada, to me, seemed a very good fit for that, to continue advancing academically in both languages. So I came to Carleton University to do my MA in 2009. And then I didn't know I was going to do a PhD. And probably Melody and Jamie know this. Like, I don't know of anybody that will tell you, oh, when I finish high school, I want to be a language tester, or I want to be a psychometrician. Or like, if you find somebody that does that, those are like red flags, because that never happens. Like, we all here incidentally, basically accidentally, then with experiences, we kind of like are geared towards what we finally end up being. And that's pretty much the case of everyone I know. Then I audited a class in language testing. And when the professor saw that I was auditing the class, I was approached, hey, do you want to be my research assistant? And I said, sure, why not? And I remember she gave me a very popular book in psychometrics anyway. I should say applied psychometrics, called applying the Rasch model, because she wanted to work with that kind of analysis in the course. It's a data analysis tool method. And that was what sparked the interest for me to continue and pursue my PhD studies at Université de Montréal. And I was very blessed because I was able to do my PhD in French. So I did my MA in English, my PhD in French, and it was a great experience. And today I'm at Carleton as an assistant professor in the same place where 12 years ago, actually now in September, I was an MA student coming fresh from the Dominican Republic. The tradition of going to conferences continue, and very important when we want to pursue our academic careers, to attend the conferences, to present our work. And at the time, I believe it was 2015, I was working as a test validation officer at the University of Ottawa, and we had put together some research we conducted during the summer there to be presented at ECOLE in the United States in Washington.
ECOLE is the East Coast Organization of Language Testers, just for people who don't know.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie.
Jamie, I have here one of your recent posts as ResearchGate, grappling with translanguaging for teaching and assessment in culturally and linguistically diverse contexts, teaching perspective from Oaxaca, Mexico. Can you tell something about it?
Oaxaca?
Yes.
Yes, I will
Oaxaca, the Mexican experience.
I will happily talk about that, but I think Angel's talking about our meet cute story about how we met the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so when we attended that conference in Washington, then Jamie and I, that was when we first met. And we have a very brief conversation after the conference, and then we kept like bumping into each other in conferences, and then we started talking about potential collaborations, and it took us a couple of years to start our first collaboration, and so far it's going great, and we'll be happy to talk to you about it in more detail in during the talk. But I think Jamie can wrap it up now, and this beautiful circle that we have in this academic friendship. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you both. So I'll just kind of round it out and kind of explain my background a little bit. So I also did not grow up as a child thinking I would get into language testing. So I really like that. Actually, I think I felt like I was trying to avoid it for quite some time, but it just kept pulling me back in. Like it was just the research, those were the concerns, those were the things that I was interested in when I was a teacher. So first I taught German, and then I've taught English as a second language. My first position pre-K and kindergarten, or pre-K and first, little ones. And then I was very frustrated with testing in US schools and decided to come back for a master's degree, or go back to school for a master's degree. And that was at Georgetown University, where actually that's where Angel and I met, was the conference that was there. I only really knew about that conference because I had been a student there and helped organize it in the past. And I knew the organizers from an assistantship I had at the Center for Applied Linguistics at that time in their language testing division. Yeah, so from there, getting the PhD, spending a little bit of time at Temple University, but then finding my home here at UNCG. One of the things that's been kind of beautiful about being here is the openness for and the space for different types of collaboration, which I've really appreciated since being here. And so, yeah, and also the support for conferences pre-COVID, right, when we could go to a lot of different places for conferences. So I had the chance to basically bump into Angel multiple times at multiple conferences. And then I would think it wasn't until like the third or fourth time we were in the same space where we're like, I think we have to we started really talking about the types of work that we do. And it's not the same. As much as I work in testing, it's from a very different training and background than psychometrics. And so our conversations are very lively, I would say, and full of debate, which actually I think made our work together much stronger. And then during that time that he and I have been working together on this project that we'll talk to you all about, I've been trying to keep some of my work public, right? So especially the work that Pedro is mentioning in Oaxaca, I'm very, I don't know, I hold that work and that group of people that I work with very dear to my heart. It's very important to me, that work that we do. And I'm really happy that it drew Pedro's attention because he messaged me on ResearchGate, and being that I knew one other Dominican academic, I asked Angel if he knew him, just maybe on the off chance it is an island, so maybe, and the English language education world is quite small, and was really excited and happy to hear that they already had this fantastic relationship with each other. And that's kind of how then the three of us were like, well, this is one of those, like, the big world is actually a very small world, and we need to take advantage of the ways that we didn't even understand how we were connected before this, and just seeing where it goes from there. And so that's kind of where we're at with this. But I do want to make sure we turn to this project that we've already talked about like 3 times vaguely. And so now we can talk about it more specifically, unless any of you have something more to add about some of this kind of interrelational dynamic that we have going on. And just move on.
Well, I'm aiming for the two of us to get together and present to the Ministry of Higher Education a big project, a V3 national project. I belong to a state college, the main state college of the Dominican Republic, UAS University. But I guess you don't have a Ministry of Higher Education in the United States, no? Higher education in our country is administered by the Ministry of Higher Education. And that is the official organism in which we are going to present a research project. I hope so. International research project, which involves Canadian, American, and Dominican students and professors as well. God willing.
Before we talk about our hope for the 3 of us working together, we'll just kind of give you some background about also why we kind of feel like it's a natural extension of and an area of promise that we see moving forward. So I don't know, where did you go? Did we lose? No.
Okay.
Are you there?
Yeah, I had to switch cameras because my HD camera was. Okay. Can you all hear me now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Can you talk about our special issue?
Yes. All right. So when when we last met in person, Jamie and I, it was in Mexico, I believe, at Universidad Iberoamericana, and that's when we seriously talked about a potential collaboration. Then during the pandemic, then Jamie reached out and we put together a proposal around the topic of assessment innovations in legal contexts, and we started reaching out to scholars across the globe because we wanted to operationalize this idea of transdisciplinary collaboration, transnational collaboration, and we were able to entice scholars from Belgium, Canada, Korea, Singapore, and the US to participate in this special issue around the topic of assessment innovations in multilingual context. And given our backgrounds, we have very vivid conversations about how do we integrate validity theory, educational measurement, psychometrics, and all the interpretation of test scores and justificationally bottom up. We understand that the standards for educational and psychological measurement could be seen as a top-down policy that it is disseminated by ARA and NCME as testing standards for sound practices. But there's a lot that comes with those kind of documents and work, because when you don't understand the context, and this, I will always be grateful to this collaboration with Jamie, because it was not that my bottom-up context sensitive idea were like dead, but they were not as active, and this collaboration brought me to a highly reflective practice of how top-down approaches can be really detrimental when we do not consider context, and working together and trying not to throw the baby with the bathwater too. We managed to what I think is going to be an excellent special issue where we take an ecological approach, if you will, to multilingual assessment, and we bring together the measurement part, but also the ecological part, the language ecology of the research that will appear in this special issue. And quick questions that we asked in this introduction to the special issue is that how are multilingual communities of practices been considered in assessment, right? Because sometimes assessment, it is portrayed as a discipline that is not as accessible to all audiences and to all researchers, but yet we are, we get recommendations, we are urged to gather empirical evidence to defend test use, to interpret scores stemming from tests. So given that we are coming from a bottom-up perspective, another key question that we asked, or an implication, was like, okay, how does this work? The way we are conducting it, going into putting this context in the forefront, how this inform current validity frameworks, right? Because established validity frameworks today, and when I refer to validity frameworks, are kind of like maxims of how you should go, or general ideas of how you should go about collecting evidence to defend a test or the interpretation from scores, how would this bottom-up approach inform validation practices today? And the wealth of information that we have gained and the lesson that we have learned, I think will have consequences to reconsider validity frameworks, and also not only to reconsider, but also to invite a very serious conversation about how should researchers go about organizing evidence, because given the inaccessibility of current frameworks, sometimes or most of the time, people that work and folks that work from the bottom-up perspective and not necessarily from an assessment center community, they are left pretty much on their own to organize the way they can the evidence that will support test use. And I think this is a wake-up call for us psychometricians, for people involved in educational measurement, to enhance the accessibility of these frameworks. And how do we go about doing that? Like, I think we have to have this idea of transdisciplinary collaboration. We have to have context-dependent researchers, teachers, students have a say around the table when these standards are being, written, when any Bottom validation practice is being written. I think that there's a thorough needs analysis to be done to hear these voices and to consider these stakeholders more seriously than we have in the past. I think this is an attempt that will be hopefully one of many to bring together transnational and transdisciplinary collaborations to remember that we have as a shared goal the unity of knowledge, regardless of from what disciplines we come from, and to advance the social sciences for the better good. We need to work together, not only using ecological models. There are other models that are rooted in social theories that can definitely help with the idea of nurturing validation frameworks, assessment practices across the board.
I think you said it all quite well. I think the other thing about this work that's coming out of the special issue that I find especially energizing, I don't know if that really captures it, but like inspiring or motivating is the fact that when we went into it, I think what we kind of understood what we are going to do is quite different than what we have now for the introduction in particular, in terms of like, I had a very clear vision in my head of how I understood the situation. And Angel had a very clear understanding of the situation also in his head, but coming together, it's a complete mashup of those two different things. And I don't know how else to move forward in the field of testing without this, with all of the limitations that are going on in testing, and coming from a side where maybe I was throwing the baby out with the bathwater and just overly a little bit like critical to a very extreme side. It's been really, it's really shifted the way that I can think about this type of work in collaboration, that in the collaborations that we've done for this. Yeah, like leaps and bounds amount of knowledge building, professional development, whatever you want to call it, through our meetings and through our debates. And to getting where we got to, which is really combining multilingual communities of practice and an ecology model in novel ways that could really be integrated into validity frameworks meaningfully, which I think is important and exciting to see happen. And so from this, then we're moving to what we're hoping in our work with the three of us. So just some initial musings around different ideas. So Pedro, you had talked about this grant. Could you talk a little bit more about
I
what you
have
were
a question before going on, please. I have a
Yeah.
question. Listen, in our particular case, in the Dominican Republic, one of the most reputed standardized tests for non-native speakers of the English language is the TOEFL. And there has been some complaining about some bias for some Latin American students. How do you view such tests, specifically the TOEFL, the test of English as a foreign language? It is a cuckoo for our students in our country. I mean, it's a student who aim to go for a master degree program for an American or British university, right?
Mhm.
How
Is
do you-
it, are you using it internally at the university there?
No,
I guess-
well, that's mostly for a student aiming to get a scholarship to study abroad, to
Okay.
study out of the country, a master degree program or doctorate program in an American or British university, right?
Mhm.
But there's it is the most reputed test in standardized test in our country. And as I said before, it is a very hard test, mostly for Latin American people. And there's been a lot of complaint, I don't know exactly about something like a bias. I don't know if it is a political, racial bias for Latin American student. You've been in Mexico, right? And I have read about some complaint about it. Mexican student, yes.
I know that ETS, the TOEFL, by the way, it's owned by ETS, Educational Testing Service.
Yes, it is.
And to my knowledge, and they have a healthy program of research for the TOEFL, but I have not, to my knowledge, come across a study with Latin American folks. That might be something that they should look into. Like, I don't know, how are the numbers in the Dominican Republic of people that take these tests that they could, probably attend to that issue and try to gather evidence, because let's be real, like, no test is perfect, right? So we don't know the kind of evidence that they have for Spanish speaking folks that take the TOEFL. If you find any research of the at ETS, I'll be happy to read it if you can send it along. But I don't know if you, Jamie, has come across with some research done on the TOEFL with Latinos.
No, I was trying to, I couldn't make it.
Mhm.
I was taking advantage of my vacation during the pandemic time. But couldn't get any data available as per the TOEFL test.
Mm.
But I have heard and read some complaints about bias about the test. I don't know what kind of bias they refer to, right?
Yeah, I know a
Well,
different,
I'm
go ahead.
a TOEFL test taker. I can give you my experience. Like, I'm not.
I took it twice.
Yeah.
My case.
I took it because the first time I failed. The first time I took the TOEFL, I mean, but in my that was 2008 or 2009. I took the the paper-based version at the time. I think that's been discontinued in most countries. But the delivery was was horrible, especially the listening components. They were playing it in a cassette. The radio was set at the end of the room. I was facing the wall. The listening input was coming from my back, and it was a terrible experience. And then when I found out about the TOEFL IBT, where you have headphones and the delivery is enhanced, then I did well. I don't recall any items or issues that I would consider to be biased per se. Although at the time I didn't have the training I have today, but definitely something that you could bring up to ETS. You can write to them to see if they have any research or if they have any plans on conducting research, or if you
Well,
or
actually,
if they are willing.
can
Yeah,
I
go ahead.
interject here? Because I think one issue you brought up here is really important, is the paper-based versus the internet-based and the way that the test is administered. Because the paper-based is still used widely, right? It's not widely, but widely, especially in areas that don't have a lot of access to reliable internet, or computers. And the shift to internet-based or computer-based testing has disproportionately really affected education in different areas of the world that don't have access to that. So like in Oaxaca and the work there, they usually use the paper-based, right? Because it's much more efficient and affordable based on the resources that they have. And they have internet, right? They have computers, but for the large number of students, it's really difficult for them to use the internet-based. And I know ETS just reports numbers and they do some score comparisons in those ways, but they're concerned about the instrument, less about the test takers, is my understanding.
Mhm.
And instrument development and how that could inform different iterations of the instrument, and not necessarily about how that means quite a number of very talented people don't pursue different degrees because they don't have access to a form of the test that lets them show what they know.
Mhm.
And what about the French language, Angel? Do they have a similar test to that of the TOEFL for the French language?
There's less tests in French, but here in Canada they use European tests.
Oh,
Yeah, so yeah, they here we use Delph and DALF. Delph is the diplôme d'évaluation de la langue française. They're owned by France International, and those are the ones they use for the French programs here. And sometimes there's a lot of in-house testing too. Like they might offer conditionally admissions to students, and they would look at those test scores, but once they are in the program, or before they are actually officially accepted in the program, they might have to take a writing test, because in French they care a lot about the quality of writing of the students. But definitely not a testing culture as in English language testing. Definitely not. Also, English language testing for university admissions, it's pretty much a business. There's a lot of millions of dollars involved in that. And it's not as big in French, at least in Canada anyway.
well, thank you.
Cool.
So this, I think what we just did kind of also models how we just kind of come about topics to talk about, to have as our potential inroads for projects, right? As these different areas where we can come together and contribute in different ways. So we've only got a little bit of time left. So we can open it up.
I'm thinking about something to be proposed to you for the coming months.
Yeah.
Yes, because I'm thinking about a project, a conjunctive collaborative project to be presented to the Ministry of Higher Education.
Mhm.
Yes, and not just, I mean, all the things I have done as a researcher so far are posting indexed article to ERIC, yes, some other linguistic magazines, but I want to do something more than that.
Yeah.
I want to engage in a bigger project to be presented to the Ministry of Higher Education in order to get approval of a national researchers. And you too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we can have to go into the details about that project in our next meeting. I think it will be a good idea to summarize the presentation today and to see if we have any questions from the audience, because as Jamie said, time is ticking. But definitely we'll be following up on that, Pedro, and,
Yeah.
and putting something
yeah,
together.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, so I think, thank you all for listening to us. We've got just a few minutes left. If anyone had any comments, questions, or things they wanted to share from their own experiences. I wish the Zoom chat had the same thing from texting where it had like the little bubble. If you could tell someone was texting. Thank you, Taptas. Thank you, Carrie, Benji. And
Thanks very much to you all for being here with us today. And I just wanted to share really quickly that our next installment in this series will be Wednesday, October 27th from 2:30 to 3:30. We'll use the same Zoom link. And our next presentation will really be more of a dialogue, and it's about our journey into sustaining our communities and collaborations. And this will be a chance for us to also dialogue with the Center for New North Carolinians.
thanks, Melody.
You.
All right, thank you everybody for joining us, and a virtual round of applause for our presenters. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for your invitation.
I see some of my Oaxacan colleagues in the chat too. Thank you guys for coming.
I want to say thank you to Pedro da Costa to invite me to this meeting.
Thank you.
There was
My
a quick
pleasure.
question. Do you have a group or special page for letting us know more about your project?
Oh, we are so in the beginning stages.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not yet. We'll get one. And then
You-
we'll put it on the YouTube for CDLC when we have one.
And if you
We're
refer to
just,
the
we're just
multi-
getting to know each other now. I mean, Jenny, no, Angel. Did you tell Jamie that was your father or your big brother? Honestly speaking, oh, he's
Honestly
my father.
speaking-
Yes.
academic dad.
Thank you. My pleasure. I'm being so honored of having you as my student back there in Puerto Plata. Thank you. And thank you, Jamie, for your invitation.
Thank you.
I'm pretty honored. My
Uh,
pleasure.
It's so great to host you both.
Thank you, Jenny, for putting this together.
Yeah.
And yeah, and UNCG folks, thank you very much. And nice to meet you again, Melody.
You too. Thank you, Pedro and Angel
Thank you.
and Jamie, of course.
All right. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.